Good morning and welcome to another edition of Our Town on 94.9 and 99.1 The River. I'm Darren Swanson. Our Town, as always, brought to you by Decorah Bank and Trust. Our guest on the program this morning, a little later on in the program, we will step into the toy department and talk some Waukon girls basketball. The Indian girls are back at the state tournament for the second time in 3 seasons. They will take on Clear Lake Monday night at 9 p.m. Lee and Connor Stegan will have the call right here on the radio, and we'll review the regular season and preview the state tournament with Waukon girls coach Ben Rausch. And first things first this morning, we will talk to State Representative Ann Osmundson of Volga, and will give us a preview and an update of what's going on at the state legislature in Des Moines. This is Our Town on 94.9 and 99.1 The River and AM 1240 KDEC. Getting a legislative update on what's going on with the Iowa legislature with State Representative Ann Osmundson. Ann joining us from Des Moines. And Ann, one bill that passed out of the Senate that has gotten a lot of attention in the early days of the session is the bill that would allow taxpayer funds to go to parents in schools, in 34 school buildings and 18 districts, to use that taxpayer dollars to seek alternative education, primarily related to private schools. Related to that piece of legislation itself, where is it at in your chamber right now?
Yes, that is Senate File 159, and it has been assigned to the House Education Committee. And there are a lot of moving parts in that bill. I did speak with a member on the Education Committee this morning because I'm not on the committee. And he was saying that they're thinking of breaking it into separate bills, which I think is a great idea. Like I said, there's a lot of moving parts, and I'd hate to throw out the whole bill just because we couldn't agree on maybe a specific section of it. So, yeah, it's in the Education Committee, and they are tearing it apart.
And did they get into any specifics on how the bill could possibly be broken up, or is that a part of the moving parts discussion right now?
Well, let me see. I did take some notes, and I'm not sure I can find them right at the moment. But he did talk about it's called the student, well, I guess you, sometimes it's referred to the voucher, but this, anyway, yes, the voucher part of it may be taken apart. There is a part for teachers being reimbursed or a tax credit for some of their school expenses. I want to say there's like 6 or 7 divisions to that bill. So it's dividing it up into, I believe he mentioned like 4 different divisions.
In your mind, why is this legislation to potentially take taxpayer dollars and give them to non-public entities necessary?
Well, I guess the argument is when students' educational needs are not being met at a specific school, the question is, should the parents have an option of sending their children to a school that might better fit their child's needs? And I realize, we have options for open enrolling to another public school. We have homeschooling, and in many areas we have private schools. So that's the argument. I feel like in Northeast Iowa, we're blessed with great schools. Some other areas of the state can't say quite as much. But, oftentimes a parent doesn't even have the means to send their kid to a different school that might better meet their needs. So this bill was presented to offer a little help for those people. And it actually applies to a very narrow group of students. I hear the dilemma. I understand, where they're coming from. I'm personally not convinced that this is the answer. And I really hope as the Education Committee keeps working on this, that they will come up with another solution that will be helpful.
And much of the response we've heard is based on what passed out of the Senate a couple weeks ago. Many in the education community are fearing that this bill would just be the tip of the iceberg when it comes to using taxpayer dollars for private schools. What is your response to that concern?
They may be right. We all know that Iowa code slowly changes over time. So you just never know. It could possibly happen.
And related to education funding, the governor this week signed a 2.4% increase in the state supplemental aid for K through 12 education. In your mind, was that the best lawmakers could do this year?
Yeah, I do think it is. That 2.4% increase amounts to about $170 extra per pupil. And since 2012, the legislature has increased funding to public schools every year. And then a couple years ago, more dollars were designated to help rural schools with transportation inequity, which I thought was very helpful. Is it enough? I can't say that, but we all have to make adjustments in our budgets as circumstances dictate. 54% of Iowa's budget funds public education. So we, have to balance that with everything else in the budget. So yeah, that is probably the best we could get done this year.
And related to the transportation equity portion of education funding that you touched on that is so key to districts in Northeast Iowa, is there an assurance out there from state government that those dollars will keep flowing to districts? Because sometimes the state makes assurances then doesn't really back up on them. Are you confident that those dollars will remain moving forward?
At this point, I would have to say yes. It is in code, and if I remember right, it gets the 2.4 increase or whatever we increase SSA every year. So that sounds pretty solid, but there again, like I said, Iowa code can always change.
And related to the issue of voting laws, the Senate has passed a measure to change some voting laws, which would reduce the time persons can vote absentee, close the polls an hour earlier, and other changes related to voting accessibility. What changes in your mind are necessary, or are there any changes necessary regarding voting laws in the state?
Well, you touched on one in particular that I have heard about. Why do we leave our polls open till 9 o'clock? And possibly in our rural areas, that's more of an issue than in urban. I don't think there's many people come in after 8 o'clock at night. So I personally don't see that as a problem. I see that as a help. I don't know. There was just a lot of questions that surrounded the election this year. And let me say right up front, I do think Iowa has a very strong election system. And we just keep tweaking it, hopefully to make it better, to give voters confidence that their vote counts.
Related to Iowa's election laws, some will say if Iowa's election system is so good, why are we trying to fix it? What would you say to them?
Well, I've heard it said that just because the fox isn't getting into the chicken house doesn't mean you don't want to put up a fence. So we just want to make sure that everything's running as it should run. And that's our job, is to try to make elections as fair and as safe as possible.
And final question for you, a couple of issues that received a lot of pre-session attention was issues related to child care accessibility and also access to broadband, which has come to the forefront in the last year with a lot of people working at home and a lot of schools going to distance learning models, especially at the end of the 2019-2020 academic year. Related to those two issues, where is the conversation at? Is there anything pending that could reach the House floor, or is everything in committee right now? Where are those two issues at when it comes to discussion?
Well, I am on Ways and Means Committee, and we did pass several pieces out of legislation there, or out of the committee there, so they are moving forward. That's on childcare. And then we have had several conversations around the broadband. It's one of the governor's priorities to take a hard look at that, to try to get broadband into every home, and also to increase speeds. So, the question is, can we get 100 upload, 100 download into every household in a timely fashion? Or do we at least get better speeds into some of our rural areas and then work at getting faster speeds? They're talking 100 up and 100 down. That's pretty fast. And in large settings, like here at the Capitol, when you have a lot of people online, it takes a lot of upload and download. That bill is moving forward, tossing around a lot of questions, want it to be the best we can be when it comes out.
And I'm going to sneak one more question in related to the child care front. You mentioned you had a couple of things move out of Ways and Means Committee. In what ways were those measures that moved out of the committee that you serve on, in what ways will that help access and affordability related to child care in the state?
Let's see. I know there was like 3 different bills. You're kind of catching me off guard on that. Some of them were to help employers if they would build out or if they would help pay some of access to child care. Another one addressed like when people are on Medicaid, and if they would take a raise in their job, they may get bumped off. I'm sorry, maybe Medicaid is not the right word. But when they're getting child assistance, if they take a raise, sometimes they will get bumped off of all assistance. So we try to do that in more of a slanting fashion rather than just a cliff falling off. I think that will be helpful for people. And it seems like we might have increased the tax credit for families that have children in childcare.
Well, Ann, we appreciate you giving us an update on what's going on in Des Moines, and we thank you for your time, and we'll chat with you here in the very near future.
All right. Thank you so much, Darren. You take care.
Ann Osmundson, State Representative from Volga, joining us to give us our legislative update. This state girls basketball tournament preview is brought to you by Fairway of Waukon and Waukon State Bank. We're with Waukon girls coach Ben Rausch. And coach, for the second time in 3 seasons, the program heading back to Des Moines in the state tournament. What has made this particular group a successful one on the court?
I would say the biggest success they have is that they're selfless kids. They want to play for each other. There's nobody worried about their stat line. And ultimately, at the end of the day, they're all just working to get the win. And so, we've had games where even our best 2 players aren't even our leading scorers, but they're doing everything else to help us win the game versus worried about, oh, did I score enough points or do I have enough assists? They take what the game gives them, and ultimately they find their success in the team success.
And when you look at your postseason run in the regional semifinals, you faced a North Fayette team for the second time this year, a team that won the Upper Iowa Conference tournament. Never easy to beat a good team twice in a season. What got it done for you that night?
Well, that night, I think just playing with a lot of heart, physicality helped. And ultimately, it was a very emotional game. Lining up against fellow senior Reagan Griffith, who's played with us for 3 years. And then, and then it came down to the will to not want to lose. And we pride ourselves on every 50-50 ball. So if it's a loose ball, we're going to be making an effort to dive for it. And I think that's what led us to that kind of resurgence late in the third quarter to kind of push the lead. We had led by about 6 for most of the game, and we went in at half after having a couple little mental letdowns up 2. And then we came out in the third quarter, we pushed it to 6 and we held it there. And then all of a sudden we said, okay, it's time to, turn up the defense. And then Margaret Wacker came alive and had a 23-point second half, mostly on just attitude and effort. And so it was really just a fun environment to play in, and the kids were playing really, really hard.
And then you went to the regional final down in Waverly against Osage. From a ranking standpoint, you guys were underdogs against Osage, but seemingly you got off to a great start in that game and really never let up. Is that a fair way to put it?
Yeah, absolutely. We kind of got up about 10 in the first quarter, and our game plan is we wanted to take their best player kind of out of the equation, because she does everything for them. She's a great shooter, handles the ball a lot for them, rebounds, and is just an all-around solid player. So our goal going in was, well, let's try to disrupt her, or disrupt Osage a little bit by not letting her get easy touches on the ball. So right away in the first quarter, we came out and we did that. And then our big push was, I watched a bunch of film, and they pride themselves on playing some 1-2-2 full court press into a 2-3 zone. And I said, I think our huge advantage is if we can get up on them and force them to play us man to man and put them outside of their comfort zone, I think we have a good shot at beating them. And, I think that equated to why the margin got pushed so far. It got to 23, is because, we forced them to do things that they hadn't had to do all year, which ultimately put the odds in our favor.
And granted, you had to do, you had experience with this only a couple of years ago. Obviously, making the state tournament is a very big deal, but how do you transition from appreciating the accomplishment of making a state tournament and now getting into work to be done mode?
Well, we've appreciated this opportunity the last few days, and we're working on, putting a good plan together for a good, very solid shooting, offense-minded Clear Lake team. They have quite a bit of firepower. They're, deep, spread the scoring out. So it'll be a little different game plan going in, but once Wednesday hits, we'll start to focus on exactly what we want to do with our game plan, hone in. And I have, a bunch of kids that are great practice kids. They work super hard, and I tell them, okay, you're this kid and this is what you do. And then we try to figure out how we're going to guard it. And ultimately we set up our team defense based on, what we think that, that offense is going to do. And I think we have, senior led, Margaret Wacker and Annika Headington were on that 2019 team. So they know what it takes to refocus, to get down there and to actually win a game down there. So with that being said, I'm looking to them for the leadership here the next few days as we kind of start to plan and prep for Clear Lake.
And you kind of walked into my next question. You mentioned Margaret and Annika were a part of that team 2 years ago. And how can they show the way to the younger kids that are getting to Wells Fargo Arena for the first time? Is it just looking to them for comfort and saying, hey, this is just like playing a basketball game like we've gotten to do 23 times this year?
Yeah, well, and the nice thing about Annika and Margaret is they are just true leaders, competitors, and team players. They just try to teach the game. If there's something that's not going right in our rotation, regardless of what kid it is, they say, okay, let's stop, let's figure it out. What are we doing wrong? So that way we can get it fixed. And that's what's led to that success, is building on, and teaching the younger kids, where to be, what is a good shot? What are we comfortable with as far as our culture and team strategy? And that's kind of what's gotten us here, is just their will to, make everybody around them better. And that's hopefully what they can instill in those young kids, so that we can keep this culture moving forward. So.
And when you look at your overall season schedule, the first Monday night in January, you had that tremendous, I believe, triple overtime game against Turkey Valley, who's playing in a regional final this week. That one didn't go your way, but you won 14 of your next 15 games. What do you learn from maybe a game like that to make yourselves better?
Yeah, that was a nice little stretch in there where we actually lost back-to-back nights. We played a tough Waverly team on Tuesday. It was realistically a 3-point game until we started fouling at the end, and then I think it ended up being 7. And I think we came out that Thursday night against Turkey Valley thinking, well, we just really played super well against Waverly, and I don't think we were as focused as we need to be. And I think that showed up in the stat line. Against Turkey Valley in that double overtime loss by 1, we had 33 turnovers, 25 team fouls, and I just felt like we mentally did not execute our game plan as well. And so, again, that was a great takeaway as we pushed then for those, next 16 games, with the next loss being a very tough and talented Waterloo West team in there. But I think it overall made them realize that we need to focus and make sure that we're ready to execute every night, whatever our game plan is. And, I know the score against Waterloo West and that loss in there, was a 16-point loss, but we came out and we played absolutely as hard as we could. And they were just a much better team than we were. So it was a lot of fun. And I'm looking forward to playing them again next year.
And Clear Lake is going to be your first round opponent. What have you been able to figure out about the Lions to this point?
Well, we've kind of started to dive into some film and looking at their personnel. The biggest thing that I see is they're very well balanced. They're very well coached, very disciplined as far as that goes. Their defense will rival that of Waverly, in which they play some zone, but I think they pride themselves on playing a lot of aggressive man-to-man defense, much like ourselves. So it should be hopefully a nice up and down, exciting basketball game to watch.
And with the new schedule for the state tournament, your tip-off 9 p.m. on Monday night, and just the way schedules go at the state tournament, it might be later than that. Is that any sort of adjustment that you have to deal with? Is there anything you can do to prepare that, or when the ball goes up, your players really won't care?
Well, I think, the biggest thing is trying to get down to Des Moines, get them settled in, try to get them off their feet a little bit before we head to Wells Fargo, will be crucial just because of that late tip off. A couple of kids were kind of saying, well, Mr. Rausch, that's not very far from my bedtime. And I typically lay down with my kids at 9:30. So I said, we're going to have to do whatever it takes to be ready to play. And the nice thing is both of us are in that situation. It's not just, Waukon playing at 9 o'clock. It's Waukon and Clear Lake, and nobody plans for a 9 o'clock tip off, obviously, during the regular season. I'm just hoping that everything will run on time so we can throw the ball up at 9 and not any later. But I think going into it, we'll kind of reevaluate where kids are at and try to make sure they get plenty of sleep the night before. And then hopefully it's not a very stressful trip down to Des Moines.
All right, Coach, it's been a great season to this point, and you got a chance to make it even better next week. We wish you best of luck as you tip it off late night Monday night against Clear Lake.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Ben Rausch, head coach of the Waukon girls, brought to you by Fairway of Waukon and Waukon State Bank. Our thank you to our guest on the program this morning, State Representative Ann Osmundson of Volga. and Waukon girls basketball coach Ben Rausch. Don't forget, each and every week we are now putting our programs on YouTube. You can follow me on my social media pages, Darren Swenson, DARINSVENSON, and we will have the links available there. We will also put it up each and every week on the Rivers Facebook page as well. Our thank you to our guest, our thank you to our sponsor, Decorah Bank and Trust, and our thanks to you for tuning in or logging on to another edition of Our Town on 94.9 and 99.1 The River.